Well, welcome everyone to Virtual Church. It's Thursday, the 18th of June. Uh, as ever, I'm hoping very much that Virtual Church will be a resource for us in difficult times and will help to strengthen us inside to cope with the strange situation that we find ourselves in, or give us some spiritual resources to keep us strong. And that, it turns out, is very much the theme of the Apostle Paul in this very last report back from his letter to the Philippians. So Paul is thinking about where does he get the strength from to cope with the different situations that face him as a prisoner doing time for God. So let me read from this. Interestingly, it starts off with rejoicing. Yet again, we said this is so much the theme of Philippians. I rejoice greatly in the Lord, the apostle writes to those Christians in Philippi, that at last you've renewed your concern for me. Indeed, you've been concerned, but you had no opportunity to show it. I'm not saying this because I'm in need, for I have learned to be content whatever the circumstances. I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I've learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. I can do everything through him who gives me strength. So the circumstances appear to be that Paul, out there on his own, on the sort of edge of the world that was known to the early church as it had gradually rippled out from Jerusalem, relied on support to keep his missionary effort going. Here he was in what was then darkest Rome in terms of Christianity, far from his roots. And just like the missionaries that we support today, like Roger and Aisha, Operation Restoration in Bolivia, or all the work that Open Doors are doing, it was great to hear from Brian the other day about their ministry. So the Apostle Paul needed some support to get on. It looks as though he just received some financial support from the Christians in Philippi to help him to keep going in his new situation. Because although he was a prisoner, I'm afraid that didn't mean in those days that the state funded you. I think it cost thousands upon thousands per day, I'm told, to keep a prisoner in our modern prisons. But then they were locked up, they had to fend for themselves. They relied on family members and friends to provide food, clothes, and other basic necessities while they were under lock and key. So Paul, very grateful, rejoicing, not simply because he's got the money, but because he sees in this money the concern and the love of his brothers and sisters in Philippi. But he's at pains to point out it's not because he's in need, because I've learned to be content whatever. That's a very interesting word, actually, the word learn. I try to spare you the Greek on Virtual Church because I know in isolation stuff you may not be up for long dissertations on the exact meaning of the Greek. But here the word learn is actually the same word that is used for the disciples. They were called mathetes, a word we get mathematics from, actually, as a learning. So he's being discipled, it says. I've learned to be content whatever the circumstances. I have been discipled by God in all of those circumstances. So perhaps when he's had plenty, when there's been enough to eat, he's been well resourced, he's learned to thank God and just relax and enjoy that situation as a token of God's love. But when he's been without, he's learned to depend on God. You see, God trains us through our circumstances. For Paul, this isn't something that just happened because he was a very spiritual person. Like us, he had to learn by experience. That was the only way to learn to trust God in the ups and in the downs, in need and in plenty. So God, through our circumstances, even at the moment, is discipling us and trying to form the character in us where we have the inner strength, the confidence, the awareness of being loved, and the experience to trust God in those circumstances. So he's learned to be content, come what may. And then he says, I learned the secret of being content in any and every situation. He uses a very interesting word here again. Sorry about this. But it's the word used for initiation into some mystery, into the, like Freemasons have initiation rites and this sort of thing. I've been initiated through what I've been through all those shipwrecks and beatings and previous times in prison, as well as in the amazing deliverances that God has given me, and the ways that he's enabled me to survive through his spirit and his strength that are with me. I've been initiated into this secret of content. There's actually a very important secret in the world of the day, the Romano-Greek world dominated by the Greek philosophy, people like the Stoics. This was a secret that they prized, and they thought you could do it by apathy, by actually refusing to engage with the world, by shutting down your desires. So if I don't want anything, then nobody can take anything from me. If I have no desire for anything, then I can't be hurt when those things have been taken away. It's a very sad way, in a way, to achieve this content. And Paul's actually saying, I found a different way. I've experienced a different thing. Just to trust God in whatever the situation is. Very, very different from the apathy, as it's technically called, recommended by the Stoics. So I've learned to actually trust God, and that means I can enjoy plenty as well as cope when I have little. So that's the initiation, and it's a much better initiation because the word he uses for content here is one of the Stoic words. I've got a much better initiation than they had because I'm trusting in the Father who loves me, that he'll see me through. So that's what the secret is there. And then he says, and I want to think about this, partly because it's something we need. We need strength, don't we, to keep going when we're isolated and when it's difficult, and when the virus is still around, and when we're worried and concerned for people who might be susceptible to it. So this final verse, I can do everything through him who gives me strength. And this is an important verse to place in context. Sometimes I hear this quoted by preachers as if it meant I can be a kind of Superman, you know the stuff, faster than a speeding bullet, more powerful than a locomotive, able to leap tall buildings in a single bound. Is it a bird? Is it a plane? Superman. I'm not sure that that's actually what Paul is saying here. Isn't he saying, I can cope with everything? He's actually saying, I've been through tough times. I've been through trials. And I've coped with it all through him who strengthens me. So God isn't giving us some mysterious superpower that makes us, turn our underpants inside out and fly off into the sunset. God's strengthening us inside so we can cope with what life flings at us. There's a strength here that's saying, if we can turn to it, if we can tap into this strength that God gives, we will cope even with coronavirus and isolation and our very strange and sometimes worrying circumstances. The word can is interesting here. Sorry, I know it's a word we don't think about a lot, And here I am for the third time speculating on the meaning of words, but actually can in English means too many different things. It means I know how to do something. I can work Zoom now and have meetings with my deanery synod. Isn't it wonderful? Had one on Tuesday night. I can do it. I know how to. Can come in. I'm just free to. Can you manage a coffee next Tuesday? Yeah, I can. There's nothing in the diary. But this is the can that means I've got the strength, the power, the ability to it. It has its root in a Greek word for strength. I'm able to cope with what life flings at me. I've got the strength to do it, is what the Apostle Paul is writing here. I've got the strength of the rock I stand on to cope with the waves. I've got the strength of the presence of a powerful God inside me, because that's how he continues. I can do everything. I've got the strength to cope with it all through him who gives me strength. Well, they couldn't use strength twice. It should be who empowers me. And that's what the Greek is. It's the same word dunamis that is used of the power of the Holy Spirit living inside us, bringing the presence of God to us. And it gives us the words dynamo and dynamite. So I've got the strength to cope with it all through the one who empowers me, I think is a better rendering of the Greek. So let us, in our circumstances, see ourselves not only as weak people, which we undoubtedly are, and we need to acknowledge, but also as people who have someone to empower us. That we have a strong one who stands with us and gives us the strength to cope. Let's see ourselves as learning through our current experiences how better to tap into that strength, which comes by trusting in the Lord. And let's see if we can discover, even amidst all the uncertainty that we have to deal with at the moment, that secret of being content, knowing that God is at work, he's in charge, and he's committed to us. Shall we pray? Dear Lord, we know it's no good pretending and thinking that we can push all through this by our own boldness, by confidence in ourselves, as the Stoics thought all those years ago. Thank you that we have a strong Lord, a rock on which to build. Help us then, Lord, to discover this great secret as you train us from day to day, as you disciple us in all circumstances. Amen. Well, a few things coming up in the near future. We're going to have a guest speaker tomorrow because I'll be taking my day off, so I will ransack at YouTube to see if perhaps Tim Keller has some more words of wisdom for us. I hope you've enjoyed his broadcast. A very thoughtful man with a lot of insightful things to say to us in these circumstances. Sunday's coming up. We'll be broadcasting from St. Michael's. That is their turn. Don't forget, if you get our newsletter by email, and if you don't, then please get in touch with Diane Miller or Benter and ask to have it sent to you. And we're emailing that out to everyone who does it. That will have some words for the service on Sunday for you to use. You've all heard Boris's announcement that churches may now open for individuals, for private prayer and reflection. So I'm hoping very much. I've now prepared most of the paraphernalia that goes with that, risk assessments and rules for this, that and the other that have been laid down, and I'm hoping that St Andrews will be open this Sunday. I'm just waiting now for the PCC to respond because they have to approve the risk assessment. So I'm hoping that it'll be open this Sunday in the morning and again on Wednesday. And St Michael's, we're hoping that that will be open on Thursday. So we're not going to open all hours by leaving the church locked for 72 hours between opening times. We avoid the restrictions that would require us to deep clean the entire church after each day of opening, because 72 hours is long enough to allow all the virus to die and to be no more. So please watch out for announcements. Hopefully there'll be something in the newsletter this weekend. So God bless you, and see you soon.